Hi, Lauren. I'll ask you to come on camera so we can see your face. So excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Can you see my screen as well?
Yes. Yes, I can. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm so excited and honored to introduce our next speaker. She is a colleague. Dr. Lauren Gonzalez is an associate professor of the Bachelor of Arts in Early Childhood Education program in the College of Education at the University of Arizona Global Campus. She received a doctorate of early childhood education from University of North Texas, a master's degree in education, and a Bachelor of Science from Texas Women's University. Dr. Gonzalez brings many years of experience to her role at the University of Arizona Global Campus, having taught in Texas public schools for 8 years before teaching in higher education. Prior to her role at the University of Arizona Global Campus, Dr. Gonzalez worked as an adjunct professor at the University of North Texas. She currently lives in North Texas, enjoys spending time with her family. She is married to her high school sweetheart, and together they have 3 young sons. Lauren, we're so excited you decided to join us this year, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And that was an excellent introduction. This is my second time presenting for the ECE conference, so very excited. Just a little bit about myself. Again, I'm from Denton, Texas, married to my high school sweetheart. And yes, I have 3 boys, and they are actually going back to school this year. They've been homeschooled, so very busy week for us. I'm going to be talking about cultural competence in the early childhood classroom. But before we begin, there's something that I would like you to think about. I want you to think about the diversity that can exist among just a small population. If you think about the early childhood classroom, you may have 10 students, you may have 15, you may have 20. So this video kind of represents all the different types of diversity that can exist in just a small population. So I'm gonna stop it right there. So you saw in that video, it was just a small population of 100 people. And among that population, multiple types of diversity existed. So you had different races, different religions, different types of employment, different types of hobbies, different locations of where they live, different types of pets. So you want to think about that and how that applies to the early childhood classroom. So did you know that about 2 years of age, children begin to notice gender and racial differences? So they're starting to be able to identify girls versus boys, how they look different. And by the age of 2.5, children learn those gender labels, whether it's a boy or a girl. And they also tend to learn the name of colors and can begin to apply those colors to different types of skin color that people have. Around 3 years of age, children start to notice physical disabilities. And at about 4 to 5 years of age, they start to display what's called gender appropriate behavior and even become fearful of differences and whether they look different, and they're fearful of how others may look different. Did you also know that socially diverse groups, so those that are different in race, ethnicity, gender, or even sexual orientation, are more innovative than homogeneous groups? And more so, the appearance of diversity and the suggestion that different opinions exist make us change how we approach issues. So in the classroom, you're going to have those different groups. It's not going to be a homogeneous group. You're going to have children that are different race, different ethnicity, different gender, and even different sexual orientation. So children go to school to be prepared for the workforce. We know this. That's the teacher's job, is to prepare them to be successful in the workforce and successful in life. But we must effectively address and embrace the reality that diversity does exist in the school. It exists in communities, it exists in our country, it exists in the homes. So we have to prepare children to not only be successful in the workforce, but be able to interact and embrace those differences. So what does this look like in the early childhood education classroom? But before we think about that, we need to look at what is culture. So culture, defined by the dictionary, is the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group, or their characteristic features of everyday existence that are shared by a certain group of people, place, or time. So you might have a group that follows the specific codes of behaviors, values, norms. Maybe you have a cultural group that has specific customs or a way of communicating. You might have a group that likes to listen to certain type of music or read certain types of books. Culture is constructed from history, and it's continually constructed, and it's based on circumstance, family, and community. So culture is always changing, and it's always conforming based on students' beliefs. Now, there are cultures and there are also subcultures. So you have your cultures of race, religion, specific types of hobbies, but then you have subcultures that can exist, and you can even have countercultures. So this video, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but she gives her brief introductory, talks about all the different subcultures that could possibly exist.
How many cultures are there in the world? We've talked a lot about the things that make a culture, things like norms and symbols and languages. But we haven't really discussed how you lump all those little things together and say, yes, these are the things that belong together. These things are culture A, and these other things are culture B. So what are the rules of culture? Well, culture isn't just about nationality or the language you speak. You and another person can live in the same country and speak the same language and still have totally different cultural backgrounds. Within a single country, even within a single city, you see lots of different cultures, and each person's cultural background will be a mishmash of many different influences. So there really isn't and never will be a single agreed upon number of cultures that exist in the world. But that doesn't mean we can't recognize a culture and understand cultural patterns and cultural change and think about how different cultures contribute to the functioning of society.
So she gave a brief snippet about subcultures, and we have to be able to recognize those subcultures in the classroom and within those bigger, broad cultures. So how do we do that? We have to teach children cultural competency, and that is the ability to understand, appreciate, and interact with people from different cultures, different belief systems, different from our own. And many children don't have the opportunity to do this outside of the classroom. So the way to do this is, number one, you create an accepting and respectful environment. You foster homeschool partnerships, and you teach children to identify, respect, and value diversity. So the learning environment, it needs to teach children to respect diversity, and it also needs to foster their positive self-concept and attitudes. So believing in themselves, believing in others. We want to create conditions where they initiate conversations. So there are conversations being held where they talk about differences, and they're identifying those differences, and they're comparing their similarities and differences to others. And then you want to have activities where they learn about differences and creating fair and inclusive communities. So the learning environment should provide opportunities for children to explore cultural diversity. So you can see some images here. On the top left, it's of a classroom. You can see there's different flags displayed from around the world. You have pictures of where children came from. You want to display pictures of children's families. And this is very important because that is very personal to their own culture within their home. You might have tools such as baskets or weaving tools from different countries. You might play music from around the world, or have rugs that represent those from different countries, or posters that show children of different colors, different skin tones, different races, different nationalities. If you have a dramatic play center, you will want to have different types of food that represent different cultures and what students in your classroom like to eat. You have a dramatic play center where the clothing represents different people from different countries, different nationalities, different communities, different service organizations, different types of employment. You might have pillows, decorations. There's all different ways that you can show children how different types of culture. Okay. Now, there are suggestions for different types of images that should be displayed in the classroom. Number one, you want to have images of children and their families. This is very personal, and it shows representation of what matters to them, representation of their own culture. You also want to have images of your own family. That is your culture, and you want to be proud of that and share that with the children and the other people that come into your classroom. You want to have images that reflect people's daily lives in the United States and even other countries. You want to have working recreation images that show different types of people and different types of jobs. You want to have images of children and adults that represent all groups in different cultures. You should have images that reflect diversity in gender roles, diversity in family styles and makeup. You want to have images that represent different types of body types. And then importantly, images that counter stereotypes. So here are some images that counter stereotypes. So on the top left, you can see it's a storybook where the woman is actually saving the night. In the middle, this is of an actual businessman who is very successful within his community, and he actually has Down syndrome. Here is a picture of a multiracial family. The bottom left is actually a picture. It's a man who is performing a Japanese dance that usually women would perform in his country. You have a child who is in a wheelchair playing baseball, and then a little boy who is playing with a dollhouse that is pink. So you can see how these images go beyond those stereotypes and show children real lives, and it shows how they can be represented. Okay. You also want to have images that represent students' interests and shows diversity in those interests. My boys actually love to watch the show Lego Masters, and they like to build Legos. So if they were in my class and that was an interest of them, I would want to have a poster that shows different people who are building Legos. You will want to have community helpers and service workers that show different races, different types of people, pictures of toys that they might play with that go beyond stereotypes, or sports that show women and men of different races who have been successful. You want to have multicultural books, and these books should reflect many cultures in a non-stereotypical manner. So if you have a child in your class whose mother is from Africa, or a child in your class who is from China, you want to have books that represent those children and tell stories about those children. There are specific guidelines to follow when looking at quality multicultural literature. Number one, you want to make sure the book avoids offensive expressions, negative attitudes, or stereotypical representations. So you don't just want to have books where the princess is wearing pink and she is being saved by the prince. Very, very important. The author of the book should be from the culture that is being depicted. So you don't want to have a book that is talking about a specific holiday that is celebrated in China that is not written by a person that celebrates that holiday, that's not part of that culture. The book should have events, situations, or objects that are historically accurate. And you want to make sure the books exemplify good storytelling. So it should have all these things, but the child should still be engaged in the story. They should still have fun. They should still be interested when the story is being read to them. The book should avoid suggestions that there's a single cause or single answer to specific dilemmas. The story should include words and phrases from the culture that is being depicted. And again, that's why it's so important that the author who's writing the book is from that specific culture. There should be explicit and precise language about cultural roots. And there should not be a set difference in cultures or groups in opposition to each other. Here are some examples of quality multicultural books that can be used in the early childhood classroom. So this first one is actually for infants and toddlers. It's called Future Astronaut, and it's about a little baby actually who dreams of becoming an astronaut when he gets older. I Will Be Fierce is about a little girl who is developing confidence and overcoming obstacles in her life. Just in Case You Want to Fly is one of my favorite books. And the story isn't necessarily about diversity, but the images themselves show children of different colors. And it shows how if they want to fly, they can learn to do so when their family helps them. Fry Bread is about a mother who teaches her baby how to cook bread. And then Saturday is a book about a little girl who goes to walk in her neighborhood with her mother on the Saturday, and it talks about all the different things she sees in her neighborhood. A fabulous resource for you it's the website called The Color of Us. And every year they list the 50 best multicultural picture books for children. And these books are determined to be quality. And what I like about this website is it lists the books based on age. So if you teach infant and toddlers, it recommends cultural books for that. If you teach preschool or if you teach elementary, it has books for all different ages. Toys. When children are playing with toys in the classroom, you want to make sure they're playing with toys that represent diversity and represent what they believe and represent what they look like. So you might have puzzles that depict children of different colors, different races. You might have dolls. Maybe you have Barbies in your class that show different types of hairstyles, different skin tones, different body types. You can see in this picture, the Barbie is in a wheelchair. You want to have dolls or play things that represent different types of workers that children want to be when they become older. This picture right here is of a doll that was actually inspired by a child who is autistic. So this is a doll that represents those children. In this picture, you can actually see a boy who is playing with Legos, and Lego has come out with a set of Legos that have Braille on them and come with Braille instructions. So these children who have difficulty seeing, they can play with these toys. You also want to bring home into the classroom. So establishing that homeschool partnership with families. And teachers must take time to talk to families and talk about families, their cultures, and their homes frequently. And there also needs to be opportunities for families and children to share about their own culture. So different ways that you can have parents be involved in learning about their own culture. One way is to have families create a mini heritage documentary. So they can just use their phone and create pictures, videos, or interviews with family members. And this can be shared in the classroom for children to learn about the different families that exist. You can take a virtual class field trip into the homes of students to see what home life is like. Maybe they can see what they eat, where they watch TV, pets they have, what their room looks like. You can invite family members in to talk about their lives or careers, traditions, holidays they celebrate. You can have a holiday celebration around the world. Whenever I taught kindergarten, every year I would have a winter holiday celebration around the world. And I would have families come in and talk about all the different holidays that they celebrated, such as Los Pasados or Ramadan or Christmas. And we would listen to holiday songs and talk about their customs and even make crafts. You can have an international potluck where families bring in a special dish that represents their family or culture and have the children try the different dishes, and the families can talk about those dishes. You can even have a multicultural celebration where you invite families in to share about their culture and their customs. I'm going to show you this video. That's an example of a multicultural celebration that this teacher has.
This is our fourth multicultural night. It started because our population is very diverse and we didn't have something like this to tell about people's cultures. So with having a diverse population here at McCarty, Mrs. Morales and I thought it would be a great idea to have a multicultural night. When students and families come in, we hand them a passport. They get to put a sticker in it from the country that they're visiting. So it's kind of like you're traveling around the world.
When we talk about our different cultures, it brings us together by sharing and seeing our commonalities. We are more the same than what we think.
It is important for me to share my culture because other people from another culture can see what we have in common and we can learn from each other. Knowing other cultures will help us respect and understand each other more.
Not everyone knows what Mongolia is. Then they always think most Asians are Chinese or Japanese or Korean. So I wanted to tell them what Mongolia is.
In general, our country is very diverse and you see that diversity here and it's important to celebrate that.
And it's so interesting when they see each other and the talking and the playing and the socializing and ooh and the ah and wow, we're all alike.
So you can see in that video how the families came in and they had specific displays that represented their culture, and the children talked about their culture, and they had costumes and they had tools and they had pictures. And that's just a great way that you can invite families in for a multicultural celebration. But you want to remember that culture and diversity should be represented every single day. So you want to make sure you're instilling those activities in the daily curriculum with your students. Other ideas to learn about families and involve them in the classroom. You might have a family tree project where they create that family tree that shows all their family members and they can come in and talk about it. An all about us poster, or you can have them create a family portrait or a family book where they draw pictures of their hobbies or what they like to eat or what their house looks like. A fun activity that I used to do with my students, if I could paint my house, they would paint a picture of their house with their parents, and then they would come in and talk about it and what their house looks like, and what they do in their house, where it is, those types of things. Something else that's fun is a family recipe book. You can have families contribute their favorite family recipe that's put into a book, and then you can share that out with the class, and you maybe ask parents to cook one of the recipes with their child. Something else that is fun is a family share bag, where you can send home a bag and families can send in items that represent their culture. So maybe clothing, books, maybe even food or pictures. Or you can have families just send in their favorite books that they like to read, books, children's books. You also want to have activities that provide children the opportunity to explore diversity. Examples might be, if you greet children every morning, you might say hello in a different language for a month. And then the next month, you might use a different language to say hello, or say hello in a language that children in your class use. You can have a travel around the world activity, where you use a globe every morning and you take a quick trip to a different country, and you talk about the different landforms, languages spoken, food that people eat, what they might possibly look like in that location. Or you might have a center that talks about schools around the world. So you have photos of different schools, different books children might read in that country. Maybe you have videos depicting children in different schools. I always like to show my kindergarten students pictures of school lunches that different children like to eat around the world, and just compare those different food items that they like to eat. You can have them make diverse art. And these activities actually came from kinder art, but they can be modified for even younger children, or the actual craft can be done with the teacher, with the children watching. So you can have, this is an Australian rhythm stick or a Chinese gong, or have them make Day of the Dead masks, or draw totem poles using chalk, or creating a Japanese fan or Kamsa handprint. So there's so many ways that you can have them learn about diversity through arts and creating those art projects. You want to provide students with materials such as paint, paper, and crayons that represent different diverse skin tones. And you want to give the children the opportunity to explore these materials, and don't make them choose a specific color. You want them to choose the color they think that represents them. And I actually just went to Target earlier today, and I saw in the dollar section, or that section where a lot of teachers go at the beginning of the year, I saw the multicultural crayons and the multicultural markers. So if anyone goes to Target, you might pick some of those up to use with your own students. You can have children create I Am Different books. So you have them draw a self-portrait, and then you put that book together and you talk about how they're different, how they're similar. You can play multicultural music and diversity songs for children and have them dress up and dance to those songs. Songsforteaching.com is an excellent website that provides a list of many, many multicultural songs that you can play for children. One of my favorite activities that I actually had a student tell me about was called Hair Everywhere. And you can have children, you can show children different pictures of different types of hairstyles. You can talk about those different hairstyles. You can have them examine their own hairstyles, different colors, length, talk about different hair products that are used. And then you can have them create a collage of those different hairstyles and hang it in the classroom. Another fun activity is called Skin Color Matchup, and this encourages children to explore different skin types. So you use different colors of nylons, women's nylons, and you place those on their hands, arms, and feet, and you ask them questions to increase their awareness. So such as, can you find a stocking that is the same color as your skin? And then have them compare those skin colors. Are they lighter? Are they darker? compared to your own skin. You can have them play diversity bingo, and Teachers Pay Teachers actually has a ton of different types of multicultural bingo sets that you can purchase. Some are free and some just have pictures of different skin tones, different types of skin tones, children from different countries. You can play diversity dress up, where children dress up of different nationalities. This is actually a simple activity that you could use as you're introducing diversity to children and teaching them about similarities and differences.
What color is this? White. What color is this? This is color? Color brown. Color brown.
And you also want to use those multicultural children's book in your classroom to teach children about diversity and talking about those similarities and differences. I teach a course on diversity, and my students have to develop a lesson plan that teaches an aspect of diversity, and they choose books. And these are some of the books that they usually tend to include in their lesson plans. So The Color of Us, Skin Like Me, the Family Book, all are welcome. So you want to use these books to teach children about their differences, their similarities, and then to respect and value those differences. So diversity activities should teach young children to respect and celebrate the differences in all people. They should help them to realize that we are all humans, and despite our differences in how we look or what we eat, that we are to be celebrated and that we are to be valued. So I want to finish my presentation with a read aloud of one of my very, very favorite multicultural books. And this book is titled Pink is for Boys. And I love this book because I have 3 boys that like to wear pink. And one of them has actually been teased for wearing pink. And that's a gender stereotype that I'm trying to teach them about. So this is an excellent book for doing that. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
Pink is for Boys by Rob Perlman and Ada Caban. Pink is for boys and girls. Bows on fancy clothes. Blue is for girls and boys. And uniforms on a team. Yellow is for boys and girls. And a crown to wear. Green is for girls and boys. grass to run on. Red is for boys and girls. And cars racing along the track. Orange is for girls and boys. And popsicles dribbling down sticky chins. Purple is for boys and girls. And unicorns, because unicorns. Brown is for girls and boys. And teddy bears to cuddle. Black and white are for boys and girls, and puppies and kittens to pet. And all the colors are for everyone, girls and boys. Flowers and butterflies and rainbows in the sky.
Thank you so much. I did not get to see the chat. I didn't see if there were any questions.